Welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are located. I'm Dario from Next and extremely pleased to initiate this interesting chat where we try to outlook our upcoming year from the perspective of digital and commercial transformation. And today we have 6 gentlemen in our panel, except Danilo, who unfortunately couldn't make it. So we have Davidek Herron from Roche, who hopefully will also join us. He's having some issues with the internet, I suppose. Timothy White, Head of Digital. Hi, Tim. How are you?
Dario, how are you?
All fine. Looking to the conversation. Mark Benkin, Founder and CEO from viihealth. Mark, hope you're doing well.
Doing well, for sure.
Haider Alleg from Ferring. Haider, same question for you.
Hey everyone.
And Patrick Mark Niederreiter. I suppose the pronouncement was quite good, right, Patrick?
Absolutely, doing well. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So, gentlemen, let's deep dive into the conversation. Maybe to start and set the stage, I would say certainly what a year, but is it really? Because in the last 24 months, our industry changed with warp speed, and especially from perspective of digital and commercial. But certainly don't call it digital transformation, right? Which means today's purpose of the chat is to set the foundations for next year. And even beyond that, and from talking to how to implement simple customer experience, which may be still a challenge in our industry, till some very complex themes like the role of the metaverse and maybe some other terms which are still far away in our pharma industry. So let's deep dive into the conversation. To our audience, if you have questions, you can raise questions, drop questions in our chat section. We will pick some of the interesting ones. And my first chat question for today is, let's discuss what we actually learned during this year from this perspective of digital and commercial. And let's start with you, Patrick, since you did the introduction as last. Patrick, what are your key learnings?
Okay, so thanks, Dario, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. So for me, it's actually two, like you said. Let's not talk about digital. For me, this is a transformation of how we engage with our customers, so medical professionals, yeah, and others, HCPs. So this is the one thing. It touches all parts of the organization. You have the legal processes in place, the medical processes, material approval, incentivation. We could continue forever, but I think this is really to be clear about. The focus is on customer engagement and to make a difference there. And the second thing is, which I think we've learned, is it was a pretty good pressure test for your organizational culture. And why do I say that? Because I think everything has been accelerated even more than before. And you could really test yourself as a leader, the culture you have in the organization, how you're able to deal with the pressure, to support your employees, to create clarity on the reason for the change. And if you are doing a good job, I would say you're in a leading position to really make sure you can create a sustainable change. And these are actually my two key learnings.
Like the word sustainable, I think that this word we certainly miss in many occasions. So sustainability is certainly something what we should encounter when we create the vision of the next year, right? Gentlemen, who would like to take the stage after Patrick?
I can jump in if you inspired me with indeed that mindset is a mindset shift is at play. So it means that you cannot just do marketing like a lawyer like before, right? You need to kind of follow how the big boys are doing in the digital space. Like the pure player in tech are educating our doctors. So you cannot afford now not to create a good experience because people are consuming YouTube, Spotify, and when they come to your company, they expect a level of decent experience, whatever is the content you serve. I think definitely that has pushed us to think differently. That also created a pressure point that if you suck at creating good digital customer experiences, it's visible now. So you cannot hide anymore. You cannot just hire a good agency to fix your problem if you don't have that culture and mindset internally. So you don't have the luxury of time and budget anymore to do that. It created I think, an opportunity to reuse our sales force differently. So I used to say, let's build close to home, right? And where the money is closer to our sales force. So, and then when you start building with them, you see that, yeah, interaction actually can be pretty good. Yeah, having just a WhatsApp experience, a FaceTime experience with a doctor. I mean, they didn't lost the, that customer relationship in a way, but content didn't follow. I mean, on a multi-channel way. It took us very much a long time to create the next best action, or a decent PDF, or a decent email, a decent landing page. So I would say that what we learn is that human can be super adaptive to those changes. Actually, I was sales rep. I was super proud of seeing some of them really taking the wave of being hybrid rep. What we learned the hard way is that content is still king, even more in pharma, and it's very hard to stress the medical legal reviews in 1 week instead of 4 weeks, right? So that's our learning. We need to watch out.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Tim?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the sake of not repeating everything that that the other colleagues have said here on the line, I reflect a little bit on in some ways the difficulty in doing this really well. I think there was maybe a thought, before or even during in certain phases of the pandemic that, okay, this is just about, let's do a bit more digital or multi-channel, let's add some additional things on top. And sort of coming out of that, we'll enable this customer experience driven organization or omni-channel organization, if you will. And the reality is everything you just heard from the guys, and probably 10 to 15 more things were required. And so it was, I think, somehow like a fundamental look at the types of capabilities that we have in our organizations, how we need to hire for the future, how we need to develop folk for the future. And then I think on the external side, it also put in under the microscope a lot on what is the value to society and to the healthcare community that pharmaceutical communications and engagement actually creates. Because of course, if you go into a world where that becomes extremely difficult and scarce, it's the old phrase, when they're shutting a bank down, right? The last person to turn off the lights usually is sort of the compliance or the risk officer, right? And so it's that sort of mentality of then, okay, when really you're hitting the wall and you're having this emergency as a healthcare system, you start cutting out the stuff maybe that's not as critical and needed. And so I think that level of transparency has caused us and caused probably the industry to rethink, what is the role that our rep can play? What is the role that our communications can play, and our marketing and our medical organizations? And so that matched up with my first point. It's just going to be really hard, and this is not going to be a one-year thing. It's going to be continual to actually get right. But I think the wake-up call in most organizations that I've seen is finally there, and we're starting to make some significant progress.
The only change is constant, right, Tim?
Exactly. Yeah.
Mark, coming to you, and especially from this angle of coming from a solution vendor, what have you in particular learned? What pharma is demanding nowadays?
Well, some of the words have been said, but just to highlight a couple of them. The industry has proven itself to be adaptable. So that's amazing, actually, because it was doubted for years that it could adapt, and lo and behold, it did. And collectively or individually, it did adapt. The focus has been across the board on looking ahead towards that value point, as well as the convenience related to driving an excellent customer experience. So I think that's, universally a long-term goal and vision. But it's really only going to be those companies that have the deep commitment to do the hard work, to get the deep data, to really work through and not just rest on the laurels of, well, we used to do this and these were the channels that worked before. We really need to make sure that we take a fresh look and accept that fresh look does also require a bit of heavy lifting. And that's going to lead those companies that are able to dig deep and work with the vendor partners and internal and hire better and make sure everybody has that chance to experience it. They'll see the gains over the next 5 to 10 years as we look towards 2030. And I think that essential value is there. The content is amazing, and physicians and patients do need it in the right way at the right time, but it will require a lot of shoulder pushing, and not just in 2020 and 2021. We'll need to make sure that we carry it through over the next several years to really have those gains.
Thank you, Mark. Let's move forward and let's speak about the trends. Which trends in overall do you see as upcoming for next year? I mean, frankly speaking, I think we can speak from a simple customer experience, which still isn't mastered in pharma, till hybrid models, back to face, will we remain in a virtual world, even till metaverse, right? I think that we can certainly discuss many things, but let's be realistic and speak what might be the biggest trend or trends for the upcoming year. Tim, let's start this time with you.
You know, this is always risky with me, Dario, because I'm really always trying to push away from jumping at the shiny objects, right? And sort of finding that next thing. And I'm always about the fundamentals and getting them right. As you know, a lot of folk, I'm sure on the call with me are in that mentality. But I think one of the main things is to really figure out what hybrid looks like. And I think that we throw it around a lot, and I can even say, forget about facing our customers and all that. I'm even saying, like, in terms of how we're working, right? And I'll give an example. Sometimes it's even easier for me to take meetings here at my desk versus going into an office and sitting on a mix of calls with people and behind screens. And so I think the whole world now, we've sort of figured out the one extreme that we can do fully virtual, and we've seen that. And then we had it kind of before where it was largely face to face. And I'm saying, again, everything, not just the pharma, commercialization or whatever. But I do see that this next year, as we are going to kind of ping pong back and forth again, seemingly between being open, restrictions, being open, restrictions, I can't imagine medical congresses are going to go back to their, thousands of people. So then what does that business model look like in terms of how we're going to engage, scientifically the healthcare community? So all of these things, I think, are what you're going to see reaching different and higher points of maturity through the years ahead, and certainly into next year. And then I think the other main trend overall is back to what I sort of said before, a question of that really looking at the value, and kind of questioning tactics and activities that maybe in the past were standard practice, but maybe now we're going to actually have to come back in under some level of scrutiny to determine if we do things again the way we used to do them or not, as certainly as the doors reopen and people start to engage in slightly more traditional fashions again. So again, sorry, I'm not bringing any blockchain, AI enabled whatever, but I can just speak from what I see. It's that about how we actually bring these things now much more into scale as the world sort of comes out of what 2020 and 2021 brought us.
Fully agree with you. I mean, our industry, we all know, is many things are not applicable like in other industries. We can't just easily use TikTok, right? So like some others can. Haider, same question for you. Which trends do you see? Especially, I think you have a very wide angle of interest. So which trends do you see in overall in pharma might benefit in our digital?
Right. I think if you take out the KPI, adoption versus scalability, can you adopt already some of the tactics that we started to initiate during COVID? We have not finished yet, right? So I think there will be a set of activities that we will keep. I think that there are a bunch of stuff that we will stop doing. First of all, I think there is a strategic decision to say we've been sometimes headless chickens, right? To just smash our doctors with so many info, so many webinars. They were kind of also fatigued about, how many content we pushed just for the sake of saying we've done something. How many resource center have we created? COVID-19 portal have we created just to make sure that we are there? And so I think we'll become more strategic, like understanding why we do what we do. So less tactical, more strategic. And whatever we decide to do, we'll do it better. So some stuff will stay. So for example, if you do create a service online to serve your clinical practice, that service will actually be much more accepted by a doctor who might say, yeah, actually, this helps me triage my patient. Actually, this is pretty good. I want to keep using this. So if you have some, we talked to some doctors and they told us, yeah, continue to do those consumer portal because we are driving patient to them and it's keeping them, the severe ones are coming, but it helps the non-severe one to just have decent, robust content, right? So, and I didn't heard that before. Before it was like, yeah, no one reads, right? No one is using your stuff. So why do you bother? So I think there will be like a little bit of more that servicing the industry type of thinking. So what type of service can we create? And interestingly, I think what is getting introduced is now people see digital properties or project not just as an asset, but as a product. So they start thinking, oh, this is a website. Should I protect the brand? So it starts like this, right? How should I protect the brand of the website? You never heard that 3-5 years ago. Now they think, oh, you know, let's protect it. So who is a product owner? So you start thinking of a P&L of a website, how much value that website or app or whatever brings, right? I think that will stay. And as you said, Tim, I think we are far away to like internally start becoming a tech company, right? And jumping on that. I think at least from talking for Ferring here, we really decided to not play in the tech arena because the talent war is too heavy for us, to be honest. I tried to hire a data scientist that worked for Amazon or Facebook before. Impossible to hire. It's just too expensive. And we are pharma, right? I'm saying it's too expensive. So it's really, really a different arena. As a second piece, I think is if you want to be plugged to that external ecosystem, then you need to think also what do we have to start doing now to be able to connect to that external ecosystem. Like the big tech, the startups, they are not coming to you easily just to please you and spend time with you. You need to provide value to them as well. So I think that's where I see a big shift, is that we are getting much open now to those external innovators, but we are still not ready to talk to them, to plug them to our commercial franchises. Yes, from a BD M&A perspective, you might have a great corporate venture people, but I'm speaking here how to connect those services that are outside to your medical and commercial franchises. That's a different ask. Yeah.
Certainly. Thank you, Haider. So in overall, no NFTs in pharma. This is far, far away. Right?
Not yet.
Hey,
but,
hey Dario, can you hear me?
Oh, hi, Davidek. Hello.
Hey guys, sorry about that. Literally, I ran last minute from a meeting and I found out this is blocked on my Mac, so I'm calling in from my phone real quick. Hey, all good. So yeah, so listen, I'm gonna jump in real quick around just 2022 kind of predictions, and what I do see, and it kind of follows what Haider was saying around just the data science piece, right? What I have seen in the last couple of years now, more so even this year accelerated, is we have made tremendous ground in regards to some of the algorithms. You can call it AI, whatever you want to do, but some of the data science approaches on how we're looking at this within the life science sector. Where I do see the continued disconnect is actually connecting that to the business and outcomes we're trying to drive overall arching in regards to whether it's patient outcomes or whether it's company outcomes. I do see the opportunity, and it's not going to happen in 22, but there's going to be a continued strengthening of that alliance of what we can predict through, let's say, data and algorithms versus what we want to drive in decisions that need to be made from a market, let's say the typical marketeer perspective. Let me give you an example. Right now, if we look at maybe patient adherence or getting patients on therapy, we're somewhat able to predict who can join and who is going to join, and who actually is going to probably drop therapy and who's not going to drop therapy. But how do we get to that next level in regards to understanding truly who can we potentially influence to stay on therapy versus who we cannot influence to stay on therapy? And I think that's where that connection is going to really get closer in 22. In addition to our marketeers, or whatever we look at the future role of marketeering being, is our marketeers are going to be able to have to make decisions faster, right? Because there's going to be so much more precision in things put in front of them. That model is going to continue to have to evolve, and we're going to see the emergence of that in 22 as well. So kind of following up what Haider was saying, but I'm really doubling down on understanding true business outcomes in my business, whether it's extending patients' lives on Earth, etc., combined to what we can actually predict coming in 22. Thanks.
Thanks, Davidek. Mark?
Yeah, I think that's very interesting from the macro trends. And I would say if I try and break it down to some more simplistic steps as well, I would see that in the coming months, we should be able to shift collectively to move from housekeeping kind of KPIs to real data, so that when any marketeer is executing some kind of program, they shouldn't just be thinking about the content side of that experience or the basic KPIs. Really, we should be moving towards an environment where there is that acceptance that what is the additional data that will be gathered? Is there A/B testing that could be done, that could be planned as part of this? And how am I also bringing that data back that will then help that predictive model gain and change over time. We need to accept that everything that we're doing is somehow connected to this greater whole to be able to drive these bigger outcomes. So I think that's something that at each local market, in each global effort, any of the kinds of efforts and campaigns can be more tightly brought into the whole so that the data that serves that predictive model can move. I think there's some other related to that sort of macro trends that it's perfect timing. We've got mobile and 5G rollouts, 4G in some countries still, but the ability to create experiences that are bar none much more significant, use much more data, and then are able to be more responsive in the environment will be very exciting in the coming years. And I think this is a good counterpoint to be able to work with the predictive capability as well as personalization. And of course, you know, we've spent last couple of years really focusing on a lot on video, personalization of video, and any of that kind of experience. We are big believers in the convenience factor and being able to bring more video at lower price points to the cause in an automated fashion. So we think that that is a core trend that will get going more. We still think it's at an inception stage, but we think in 2022 it will start to get going to where people can actually see and realize some benefits that it can provide as well moving forward.
Thank you, Mark. Maybe just to add, I think it's still very interesting that for many great initiatives, the current infrastructure is still not ready yet. For instance, for proper AI, metaverse, or some other upcoming tech, we still miss computing power, internet speed, and the basics, which means that this is still under development and under construction. Believe it or not, but it is currently so. Thanks a lot, Patrick.
Yeah, so thanks. For me, I try to combine, let's say, internal and external trends. So one is simplicity to sustain the change, and let me explain what I mean. When we talk about a single point of contact, so I think this is standard across many industries. There's one person who makes sure you get what you want at the time you need it. It could be a human, it could be a connection to a website, providing content, but it needs to be seamless and very clear. Who is the person I need to talk to, and how do I get the info I need at the time I want? Also, emphasizing the connectivity across the person and technology. And the second thing is KPIs. I think sometimes we have the tendency to overdo it. So I fully agree to everything you said about big data, data scientists, and artificial intelligence. But you know, if you talk about operational KPIs, how many emails do you send? Yeah, performance KPIs, how much consent did you generate, and then customer KPIs like what's the NPS or the customer effort score? You lose people. So what can we actually do as an industry to make it easier for employees? For example, by saying 1 out of 2 customer requests is solved within 48 hours. So why is it different? Yeah. First, because you know we have defined the journeys, the pain points. We can measure actually feedback and know what's going not so well. Let's put it this way. We are able to follow up within 48 hours and are able to understand the response. So if you are in medical, you could think about what are my customers? Do I get the requests? Can I answer within 48 hours? Is it clear who would be responsible? So it's also a way of empowering your people and making sure they can also co-drive the change, you know, without focusing too much on the details, defining journeys, pain points, and tools, and all this kind of stuff. It's also important, but I think sometimes simplicity is king here. And I think this is where we need to get better for our external and internal customers. And deceleration. I think, you know, we reached a point where, like I said before, many employees reach the limit, and sometimes even full organizations. You can read it everywhere, you know, employee retention and turnover rate and all this kind of stuff, because people say, I don't care where my next job is as long as I can stop what is going on at the moment. Yeah. The second biggest trend for us is, I call it deliver the last mile. Yeah? So what do I mean? It's when you provide a service, like a recommendation, or when you partner or deliver an app or a digital therapeutic, make sure the customers know it's you who does it, the product, the service, whatever it is. Because I think, you know, what we're also doing is pharma, we're partnering a lot, but I'm not sure whether we always reap the benefits or whether it's the others who can actually benefit more from what we're doing. And you can see this trend, I think, everywhere. Amazon, you know the story of Amazon, everyone knows it. Now they have brick and mortar stores. Now they have the cars to deliver the parcels because they say someone else slows us down. There's a better way to do it. So create this visibility and really make sure for the most important step, the last one in the chain, it's you. You need to do it because this creates the visibility, the trust, the loyalty. Yeah? And if you do this across all your journey, I think this is where we could finally end up with creating this seamless, holistic customer experience, which is what we're looking for.
Thank you, Patrick. Very interesting indeed. Next question, what are the missed opportunities from this year? Maybe we can start with you, Mark, because you have this different angle, and as a solution vendor, I think that maybe you see some opportunities which pharma didn't use. So how do you see that current situation?
Well, I think the door is opening to look at different populations in different markets that maybe didn't have access to certain products previously, that because we have now the industry has now gotten to a point of acceptance of data, digital content, and all the value points that are built into that, and transitioning away from a single type of model of commercialization. I think it opens up real opportunities to meet the needs of patients and professionals in markets that perhaps didn't have access to certain products previously. It means we can market differently. We can, doesn't need to necessarily be 100% digital marketing. It can be hybrid, but we can now start to apply that and really take a top-down look and say, okay, this market is, or these 10 markets are where our core is, but what about the next 10? What about the subsequent 10? Where are the places where there are gaps? And that could be a really compelling approach that currently hasn't been covered because we've all been chasing the basics to get done. But I believe that will also help drive the usage and the trends within this space and the acceptance at the patient and physician level that indeed we can market to them effectively in those various markets downstream with products perhaps that they haven't had a chance to receive.
Thank you, Mark. Tim?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not sort of always learning something and trying to improve, then you're probably not, going fast enough in some ways. In terms of missed opportunities for the industry in 21, I think there was probably a bit of, it's not necessarily in commercial fundamentally, but I think we could have gotten smarter with supply chain probably. You saw a lot of the fluctuations happen in 20, and then subsequently a lot of overestimation, underestimation, and I know this has happened all across the industry. If you just look at, on one hand, massive amounts of stock in certain markets, and then actual medicine shortages in other markets, and so I think maybe it was a missed opportunity to continue to apply some of these new technologies to actually smarten up some of the basics, actually, in terms of just making sure that we are producing enough medicines and we're getting them to the right people at the right moment. I think probably a secondary learning is broadly speaking that we probably focused an awful lot on how do we actually take our existing field teams and field reps and get them in a very sort of traditional fashion in front of a customer through a video screen, and not always trying to look at that bigger picture of where opportunities could be found in engagement. And actually, I love some of the ideas that Patrick was sort of giving out about looking at this from a very service orientation and how companies would look at, how quickly you can actually achieve time to to a response or to an answer, and instead maybe a bit still too much focused on what is the role of a hybrid rep driving a message or things like this. Because I think if you flip that the other way, you obviously can create probably a longer term sustaining growth and competitive advantage versus just plugging the gaps that we had existing in this past year. But look, a lot of learnings, that's the other thing. And so that's good, actually. Again, from a positive side, it's good that there's opportunity for 22. And I think your last question that you had on the list, and then I'm gonna unfortunately have to jump off as you know, Dario, is in terms of tips for this year coming up, it's listen to your customers, talk to your customers. Don't get overly burdened by the internal. And I know that's really, really hard, and it's something we often struggle with, but you know, really get out there and see how things are, and ask the right questions, not just in a self-serving way around maybe your product or your service, but really on, you know, how they want to interact, the challenges that they're having, because the healthcare system's under an immense amount of stress still in this and all of this, and where we can actually play a better role. And I think if people took the first weeks or months of the year to do that on a maybe more regular basis, you'd find the quality of activity and tactic from, say, February through to December to be much higher than if we just sort of run again and think about what we actually need to do. So anyway, that's just a couple thoughts on where we learned last year and maybe where we can use that to pivot for next year. But thanks again, Dario.
Such a simple, but such a powerful advice. So yeah. many times we forget about simplicity, right? Thank you, team, and appreciate your participation in this interesting chat.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move forward, and let's hear the insights from Davidek about the missed opportunities for this year.
Thanks, Dario. So obviously this year has been very, you know, it hasn't been like a normal year, right? As was last. But I think one of the areas where I think less of a miss, but I think more opportunity can be had was around just evolving our go-to-market models within the industry, if you think about it, right? So I mean, we've actually been pushed to the point where we're and it's not about people and people showing up in front of customers, but our customers have been, you know, clearly asking us to evolve how we add value. And I think what a lot of companies did is, you know, they really try to switch and they try to turn that value to virtual, which is not the same, versus you see some companies actually, you know, transforming their go-to-market models in the field, right? So actually getting rid of your traditional sales roles that are in the field, even medical teams, and having that single point of contact. And I think what we could have done as an industry is double down even more on that model of really understanding, I think Patrick mentioned before, understanding truly what are our customers' pain points, right? And how do we solve those? And then how do we drive value through that? And that's not hiring a whole bunch of people to show up in front of a doctor or caregiver to give, you know, information, right? It's about understanding that those pain points and really driving that value. And I think that's really this year where I think we could have done better, but you are seeing some companies leading that way. And I will also predict for 22, you see more of that happening.
Thanks a lot, David. Patrick, you're muted.
Sorry. So for me, it's promote visibility as an opportunity for positive change. And let me explain what it means. So I have the feeling that when a person, a function, or a team discovers that something is not in place, the first feeling of this person, team is being guilty. Why didn't we think about that we need someone who's specialized in digital health, yeah, to answer all the GDPR questions? Or why didn't we hire product owners in IT, yeah, or agile coaches? It doesn't matter, you name it, yeah. But I think, you know, visibility is really important so that people see it as an opportunity and say, okay, this means we can get someone in our company who is an expert from whom I can learn, or maybe I can upskill myself or the team to do the job. Yeah, same for customer-facing roles. I think, you know, for a very long time, it always has been a test and learn approach, but a black box. You don't know what happens out there. And, you know, it's not necessarily bad. This is not my point. But now it becomes visible. Everything you do, we start to track all the interactions, the number of emails, the reaction on the emails, the number of consents you generated. So you cannot hide anymore. And the question is, do you like it or not? And how do you react to these changes? And I think this is where we have to be very mindful and supportive to these people to show them that this is really a unique opportunity because they have more chances to talk to their peers, their teammates, their first line leaders to really say, okay, for me, it seems to be not the number of emails, but rather, you know, finding the right tonality or whatever it is so that the people open it and I can get the consent. So what are the tips you can, you know, give me to do a better job? So I really think this is a tremendous opportunity, but if you compare it a little bit, and don't get me wrong, yeah, it's like politicians learning how to manage the crisis during COVID. I think it's not a, you know, pleasant experience, yeah, to do this when the whole world is watching. And I'm not saying it's an easy job, but we need to avoid that people have the same feeling. And this is why I'm a strong advocate to say, please see visibility as an opportunity for change, because when you know what needs to change, we can do it, but don't ignore it.
Thank you. And Haider.
Yeah, so I think we've missed an opportunity to be super obsessed about delightful customer experiences. I mean, we are still watching the world changing around us, being amazed by tech companies creating new type of experiences, and we are still very much following that trend, right? So we have the means to be in the best industry ever in terms of impact, on the impact you have on people. I mean, it's not when you ask people outside the industry, and you tell them healthcare, right? I'm in the fertility business, so it's even more emotional because you are creating life, you are building babies, right? So it's kind of building families, making babies. It's something that is quite emotional, and we have not yet reached that point where we can say we want to build a delightful experience. So it's okay, right? So we are saying we do the minimum viable experience. Is it good enough though, right? So do you want your I'm just taking example. Do you want your sales rep to be, I'm just using sales rep as a stakeholder. Is it the most delightful experience for sales rep to just check the boxes on the CRM and to say, I call it a day, I did, not really, right? It's not a fun experience. So have we thought on how to create the delightful experience for everyone, so that we say, if you do that, you will actually win 25% of your time if you do that properly, because you will learn on how to optimize, the next touch point and so on. So we haven't really, so we've been a bit reactive, right, to that new change, right, with COVID and so on. So we've been, as I said, headless chicken, sometimes just reassuring ourselves that we were doing the right thing, and forgetting that, hold on a second, I'm fighting to grasp 15 minutes of attention of a doctor that is super busy, that is like super stressed, and I need to steal 15 minutes. So who is good at stealing 15 minutes of attention on an app? It's not pharma. It's Pinterest, Airbnb, Uber, you name it. They created services that can hook you up. Or Tinder, for God's sake, it's talking about fertility. It's not that far. So you see what I mean? So that's where I'm saying that product mindset, creating delightful product, or a product 10 times better. I'm just giving a verbatim that I have not heard in this industry, that we should hear in the industry. Have we created a digital product or digital experience that is 10 times better than our competition? Question mark, right?
Yeah, indeed. We received a couple of very interesting questions from the audience, and I would like to pick a few of them. First one, as digital leaders, what are the difficult trade-offs you have to face in 2021 or anticipating in 2022? Who would like to go first?
I can, so I'll jump on it. So I would say on the managing expectations. So what do I mean with this? On the one side, digital is touching all parts of the organization. So there's a huge expectations from all functions, HR, finance, supply chain, especially if we talk about, artificial intelligence, data, forecasts, you name it, what you can actually do. So I think what is sometimes a difficult job to do is to balance priorities, to say, where can you focus on? Where can you really make a change when you invest enough of your capacity and brain power and money? Yeah? Without starting too much at the same time, because you would overpace your own team's capabilities, you would put too much stress on the organization, create more confusion than actually doing good. And I think this is happening on a continuous basis, because we also learn. We don't, let me speak only for myself. I don't have all the answers. Yeah. So sometimes I also have to make hypotheses and work on them and course correct. And then you have, again, go back to the organization and reprioritize and help them understand why you changed your mind, or why this learning led to a change in strategy. And I think this is really tricky. And this is where I would say you will become a very good communicator and manager if you're able to do it. And I think this is really a skill which has been built over the last 2 years for people working in the area of digital.
Thank you, Patrick. Who would like to build on that?
I can. I mean, the trade-off that I can see is we tried hard before COVID to make, at least for my company, to make digital a commodity. So we wanted to kill the word digital and to say it's just business, right? And what we had to continue doing is this coaching. So the trade-off was for us that we couldn't remove that word digital or innovation that fast enough, because we still had to massage that transformation, right, during COVID. And some people wanted to just know, how can you go next, right? They didn't understand that this was part of their new normal, the marketing, medical. When we tell them, no, don't give it to digital, that is actually your new job, right? So, and I think the trade-off for us was to, we were before COVID on the plan to really make it transparent. I love the idea of making technology transparent so that it's just becoming business again. And because of COVID and because of that, we had to be a little bit more techie in our language, so that when you have Zoom to explain to a medical person and virtual summits to explain, so you couldn't really hide the tech discussion out of that. So yeah, so I have to say, so we still are in for a couple of years at least before we call it a day and we say, yeah, phase 1 of the transformation is done, let's go to phase 2. Yeah.
Thank you. Davidek, Mark?
Yeah, I'll say something real quick. It's probably less of a trade-off, but just more so, again, defining what digital is within our vertical, right? And what does that mean to our customers, and what outcomes are we trying to drive? Some of the trade-offs we have to make is around just getting some of the foundational elements in place, right? Really simplifying it and making that understand what it looks like in our company, right? So sometimes we see digital in Ubers, the Amazons of the world, but it doesn't matter. What does it look like within our company, right? What is that? How does that impact our, the pain points our patients are experiencing, right? And how do we remove some of those barriers? So I think the trade-offs is we're really having to focus on really taking a step back to get some of the foundational elements in there. And that does include people, process, and technology. Versus, in theory, we should be a couple years ahead and really focusing on, to your original comment, Dario, like, how do we start setting ourselves up for the metaverse, right? This inclusive environment where we really can drive better patient outcomes potentially in that. But we can't even think about that because we're really focusing on some of the foundational elements of what does that look like in our organization.
Fully agree. Thank you, Davidek. Mark?
Well, I think in terms of trade-off, a lot of times it comes back to that expectations that Patrick had mentioned. You've got this requirement to really run a marathon, and perhaps even an extreme marathon, right? An ultra marathon. But in reality, nobody's got time for more than a sprint. So you need to be able to make sure that anything that is done while the infrastructure is being laid, as Davidek mentioned, while everything else is going on, that you're able to do the right trade-offs such that you are able to run the sprint, but be still moving towards that marathon. We've mentioned issues of convenience and trying to have that product mindset. If you look at the Amazons of the world that have been essentially working the same model for the last 20 plus years. So they've been doing the same thing and just continuing to hone. That's the business. More products, more customers, that's how you do it. And so in our industry, I think we're now have started to use this year to really believe and define what those ultimate goals are to bring value to patients, value to physicians. And now it's all about making sure that we continue that trend. So in order to have the right approach to it, we need to understand that each day we'll be asked to sprint, but we need to be also working towards this as a bit of a marathon. And that means we have to remain curious. We have to remain adaptable. And we also have to ask ourselves and our vendors and the people around us, so what? So we've done something different of late. So what? How is that helping to bring forward that next step towards this ultimate continuous vision, which really doesn't have a perfect answer, right? Getting personalized medicine right, there is no perfect answer. The answer is that somebody is satisfied today, and we hope to satisfy the next person tomorrow. So I think this is part of our evolution, and we need to just make sure that it's not a short-term trend, as perhaps digital was in the 2000 to 2010 period, and that's how it was treated in the industry. Now we have a real opportunity to go deeper, to have the infrastructure that's there, and to keep moving forward collectively so that we can deliver better experiences for our patients and our physician customers downstream, as well as for our internal personnel.
Thank you very much. And last but not least question, gentlemen, which advice would you give to our audience for the upcoming year? Which advice, concrete advice, you believe might revolutionize their digital commercial strategy or more? Who would like to go first with that very simple question?
Very simple question, but a very complex answer, right? The advice I would give is please reinforce it's not about technology, right? It's about understanding truly as an organization, and all organizations aren't created equally, right? What are you trying to drive as an outcome, truly, right? And then within that, how does digital play a role, right? How does customer experience play the role? Because I think we use these terms very blanketed, but in reality, again, just truly understand what you're trying to solve for. Ultimately, hopefully, it's around pain points of patients and driving better outcomes. And then really, you know, just start testing. Again, to Mark's point, it's a marathon, but know that there's sprints within that. And know that, I mean, if you look at some of the trailblazers, let's say, even outside our industry, to Mark's point, it takes decades, right, to get there. It's not going to happen overnight, but just start taking those baby steps and trust it and partner. If there's anything, this is why I love Dario joining these platforms. We need to partner. We're not competitors, right? We're trying to collectively move healthcare systems forward. In order to do that, we have to be aligned on similar outcomes. And if we're doing that, it'll meet the business outcomes in the end, right? So I think the advice here, again, is really focus on the people and focus on really what we're trying to drive as an outcome.
I will piggyback on this, saying it's definitely about the people. I think if you look at internally, if you can move people and build that collaborative learning platform with your colleagues simply and find your own solution, I think that will be sometimes more authentic, better as you know, running a solution outside than trying just to copy and take what's worked for another company. So sometimes we've done some amazing brainstorming with, you know, 20 people that were very much different, you know, from different parts of the organization. We came up with a plan, simple campaign landing page, you name it, right? So something that was just working, and everyone was behind it. And the power of a team that can do stuff is sometimes better than any budget that you can give, you know, to just an external solution or agency that can save the day. So I think sometimes you have to own your stuff, right, and get on with it. I think COVID stressed this pretty much, but we could easily come back to our comfy seat and say, yeah, you know, let's just run a brief and give it to someone. You will always have, you know, the need for partnership, but sometimes that ownership, you know, internally, really knowing what that outcome, you know, is and why do we do what we do, needs to be owned, and you need to make people accountable and empowered to have that internally, not just sitting outside of the organization.
Thank you. Others?
Yeah, I can jump in.
I think just that.
Okay, Mark, go ahead. All good.
I was just going to say that, you know, as you look forward, I mean, taking a rest now and then turning the page, I think at the beginning of the year, it's important to look back as, you know, both inside or anywhere in this industry, there should be a small moment of pride. There has been a big shift in, I think, sense of purpose across the industry. It was there, but now it's being voiced properly, and it's being accepted by many more people, and that leads to an internal confidence as well as you approach these new capabilities. And we know that there's a lot of work to do, but that should allow us to do things like what everybody has mentioned today, to keep on this cycle, to keep on this trend, to look for whether it be innovations or ways to make it simple internally, or ways to help people be along as part of this journey from a resourcing perspective. I think that's an important approach, an important realization that, you know, we are part of this and we will have an impact on patient and physician lives several years from now based upon the work that is being done in 2022. So rest up, enjoy the fact that the year is going to change, and then turn the calendar and let's get ready for the next cycle.
Thank you, Mark. And final words, Patrick, you have the honor.
No, I really liked what Davidek said, because I think it's actually very difficult to do, to say what are you actually trying to achieve when you talk about customer experience, customer centricity. So really make sure we have the same understanding and not use these buzzwords. I think if we're able to achieve this, that's a very good first step. And the second thing for me is then just continue what you started in 2021. I think 22 is not about starting a lot of additional new things. I think we all create a lot of learnings, what worked well, where we need to improve, and where we need to actually solidify what we have started, because we have a better understanding. We have hired the people, we have created governance around processes, tools, etc. Yeah, meetings, you name it. And I think this will then also, actually separate the best from the rest. Not actually more levels. I think we will see a separation between those companies who really excel and those who are not able to do the heavy lifting. I'm really convinced this is what we're going to see in 2022, because it means you identified the right topics, you're able to follow up, and you are able not to overpace the organization. And this is where I think all of what has been said is very, very important for. And then let's see who will be where next year. Looking forward to it.
Okay, gentlemen. So it was a really great pleasure to have this chat today. Wish you all the best for the upcoming holiday season. Looking forward to even more challenging next year, right? With some new digital variants, not COVID, but digital variants. And yeah, thanks a lot once again. And we will publish that video on our official YouTube channel. So take very good care.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dario, and everybody.
Thank you, Dario.
Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.